Today I am in Willesden in this beautiful churchyard that belonged to St Matthew's Church. The church itself was demolished in 1962. But about to meet Mark, who is going to tell a story of an unfortunate incident, a tragic incident that resulted in a couple of fatalities. Now towards the end of the film, we'll bring you back to this graveyard and end the story.
Today we're in Owlerton and we're currently in 𝗓𝗏𝗏𝗘𝗏𝗡, which was the former location of Argyle Street, a street that's long since gone and it's been replaced with modern housing. And we're going to take you back to September 1887. There was a pair of girls that lived on the street from different families, and they were teenagers and they were also best friends and inseparable. And the story I'm about to tell you is confusing, weird and very, very tragic. The two girls were Mary Jane Priestley, aged 14, and Roseanne Bairstow, aged 13. And they both worked as mill hands in the local mills of Owlerton. And here, where Aldi currently stands, there used to be a mill here called 𝗓𝗏𝗏𝗡𝗏, and that's where the two girls worked. This mill building on the other side of Owlerton Road is actually a surviving element of that industrial age, and this Owlerton Mills complex was the former premises of Robert Shaw and Sons. And as it happens, Mary Jane Priestley actually worked here for a little while. She'd worked across the road at 𝗓𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗡 for about 4 years, and she came to work over here, which had a bit of a fallout with some of the weavers. They said that she wasn't loading the bobbins quick enough, and there was a bit of, shall we say, unpleasantness. And on the morning of Friday the 16th of September 1887, she tried to gain access to the premises to come to work, and she was actually told that she wasn't working here anymore. So what she did is she went across the road to 𝗓𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗡, where her friend worked, and they actually set her on that morning. And they were working together happily, according to the people inside the mill, up until about 10:30 that morning, when both of them decided to go for a walk. So the two friends had walked out of the 𝗓𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗡's mill without giving any explanation to their employers, and they walked across the fields behind me and arrived here at the Chellow Dene Reservoir. And what happened next really defies all logic and understanding, because from what we can gather, the two girls were very sharp and very intelligent. Both were from comfortable homes, especially for those times, but they'd both made the decision to come here and walk in the direction of the reservoir up here on the top tier, and into the water they went together. The alarm about the girls' disappearance wasn't raised until the early evening of the Friday, when they had both failed to return home from work. The police were notified, and the following afternoon, the Saturday, a policeman was walking along the side of this reservoir, and he came across a discarded shawl on the ground. The shawl belonged to Mary Jane Priestley. So an initial attempt to drag the reservoir at that spot was undertaken, but neither of the girls' bodies were discovered. And it was actually the following morning, just after 6 a.m, when a set of 2 footprints, which had been made by clogs, were discovered in the mud going into the direction of the reservoir. So that section of the water was dragged, and the 2 girls' bodies were discovered, clasped in each other's arms. There was an attempt to discover whether or not the 2 friends had been the victim of foul play, but there was only the 2 sets of footprints, and there was no other footprints to suggest that somebody had returned from the water. And when the 2 girls were laid out at their respective homes, there was no trace of any injury or any bruising. So it did look like they had basically gone willingly, without struggle, into the water. In the days that followed the discovery of the two girls' bodies, an inquest was held here at the 𝗕𝗏𝗏𝗡𝗏 pub on Ollerton Road. And the inquest itself was it was a scene of much questioning and much weighing things up, you know, one thing against the other. And if you look back through the news reports, you kind of get the impression that nobody really wanted to suggest that it had been suicide, because they were teenage girls and perhaps that was just too shocking. You know, they were looking at the disposition of the girls on the Friday morning, and it was said that they were both very, very cheerful. There was nothing to suggest that they were about to commit an act of self-destruction. And there was no evidence really to suggest it had been suicide. It was more a case of two girls walking into very deep water together. So, with that in mind, a verdict was reached, not of suicide, but found drowned. As you'll know, what we always like to try and do is take the viewer to a final resting place of the people that we've been covering in these stories, and that's not always possible, because that all depends on whether or not there are actually things like burial records, graveyard plots. And we did try to find the final resting place of Mary Jane Priestley, and despite our best efforts and the resources we have access to, we've not been able to do that. However, in the case of Roseanne Bairstow, we have been able to find her final resting place, and it's here in the churchyard of St Matthew's in Willesden. That's where she was laid to rest in September 1887, and we'll take you to the grave now. She's here. This is the Bairstow family grave. It's covered in debris. I think we need to clean this off. Yeah, you can see Bairstow there. Yes. There. Also, Rosanna, their daughter, who died September 17th, 1887, in her 14th year. Rosanna. I said at the start that this is a very, very strange story. It's bizarre, and when you look at the facts and you look at, you know, what happened, what led to young girls from Ollerton to commit such an unbelievable and confusing act of self-destruction. You know, what annoyed them, what upset them, because by all accounts, when Mary Jane Priestley came across to the mill to work with a friend, surely the unpleasantness of what happened at the other mill, that must have, you know, long gone. She got herself another job very, very quickly. What sort of conversation did they have that morning? When did they decide they were going to go to Chellow Dene to do that? So sad. So very, very sad. The beginning of their lives, so much to look forward to. And as we said earlier on, from comfortable homes. Whatever the reason, none of those two girls know what that reason is. Wherever Mary Jane Priestley is, you know, God rest her soul, and the same for this poor girl. Rest in peace, Rosanna.